Phil and Kyle start a podcast, and Rudy Gobert comes to town. Hardly a coincidence. It's Flagrant Howls with Phil Mackey and Kyle Theige.
And then Rudy Gobert gets put on the what's the list called? The
health and safety
list.
Protocols, I think.
Is that just for COVID? Are we still doing that?
I think so. It's to the point where someone was joking with Chris Finch over the weekend. Chris Finch has no idea what the protocols are. I don't think anyone knows. But
I didn't even know that they were still doing like the pull a guy off a team because he's sick. The NFL basically said we don't care anymore. Just whatever, dude. Just
I think you kind of admit yourself. He hadn't been feeling well leading up to that Friday game. Ant didn't either. They both played, and then the next day he checked himself into the COVID protocols, and now you just got to kind of wait. I know he's not playing tonight against the Knicks, but it's so weird. No one really knows the protocols, but they looked pretty good without him on Saturday.
They did, and we can talk about how much they're going to get in a trade for Rudy Gobert here soon throughout the episode. No, so we'll get into favorite, least favorite things. We'll get into flagrant or no. I'm going to be sitting inside the Target Center. I'm in Minneapolis here for this episode. I'm a little ashamed that I haven't shaved the parachute to my mustache or the safety net like you did. Dude, you went full for the YouTube audience. They're probably just like mouth agape. Wow, look at the bold mustache. Kyle literally has a Tom Selleck right now with no safety net, nothing.
No, not allowed near schools, I don't think. But no, I told you I shaved this on Friday morning, and then I haven't lost a bet since then. So I'm close to a divorce, but I'm really on a heater right now when it comes to bets. So until I lose,
you look like an Unsolved Mysteries sketch.
Just
have you seen this generic mustached man who's kidnapped 5 kids in a small town in Pennsylvania?
My dad has an amazing mustache, but yeah, this just looks like I drew it on with pencil, but it is real. It's not great, but yeah, sorry to the audience if you have kids, but I'm on a heater right now. The Wolves keep winning, the Vikings keep winning, so I can't shave it until maybe 2026.
Man. Well, I guess maybe I could shave the beard here tonight, and
it's looking good though. Yeah,
for next week, maybe I'll join you. We'll see.
Mustache Monday will be a good one.
Yes. So, well, tonight the Wolves play the Knicks. A lot of you are going to be listening to this podcast maybe even after that game is over. So we're going to keep this more of like a sort of broad thematic episode of Flagrant Howls, your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast, where we just want and still want the Timberwolves to win 50 games this season for the first time in almost 20 years. Mathematically, they're off pace to do so. They're only on pace for 41 victories right now because they're 5-5. So let's just start with you pick a category, least favorite or favorite. Where do you want to start? You want to rip the Band-Aid off, or do you want to start with the Band-Aid off?
Least favorite. What was your least favorite thing you've noticed? Friday, they had a game Friday, game Saturday, 1-1 lost one. What didn't you like?
I think my least favorite thing is just how, and this is not surprising yet. I think it was always going to take like 20 games, but my least favorite thing is how the lineups that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be good are good, like the Rudy Gobert-less team from the other night, and then like the Ant plus small teammates lineups throughout the season, or the Jordan McLaughlin as the point guard with any lineup combination compared to D'Lo. That a lot of these lineups are good for the Wolves through 10 games, but the main lineup that you need to be good has been underperforming through 10 games. I am not saying it's a finished product. I'm not even like sounding a panic alarm necessarily, but I think my least favorite thing is that the lineup that needs to be good is dragging behind. It looks like it's not playing as hard as it could. It's not playing smart basketball, but these other lineups, look what's possible when these other groups go out there. So just a little frustrating.
And, we'll just keep saying it until we get to 20 games, but 10 games through, that's probably the biggest issue, is just that at the end of the day, you have to have this starting 5 work, or some iteration of at least 80% of that starting lineup, and it just hasn't. And starting to kind of piss people off because it's just not fun. Like, it's just so clunky still that it's like there's just no rhythm and flow. So clearly, obviously, Rudy played on Friday. I thought they actually played better against the Bucks. That Bucks team is such a wagon and has so much chemistry and experience. Now this is like the 3rd year of their experiment with Drew Holiday and Brook Lopez and those guys. So they just know how to play, and they just stuck it to the Wolves, but the Wolves played pretty well. And then Saturday, as little as you take away from getting trounced by a Bucks team, you can't take too much away from that Rockets game either, because they're the other end of the spectrum. They're so bad. But I guess the thing I haven't liked is just the shooting. Like that, this team didn't lose as much shooting as people think. Malik Beasley was a volume 3-point shooter, but Pat Bev wasn't like, in the 3-point contest. And Vando wasn't shooting threes, although I don't know if you knew this, but now Vando's shooting threes in Utah. And it's
Dude, what is happening in Utah? Utah just trades their two best players, and now they're apparently
awesome.
they're just better. And Vando's Dirk Nowitzki, and all right.
I think Vando's shooting better from three at a better percentage and better volume than Jaden is. So it's like, oh, okay, well, excuse me while I go drink bleach. But they just play a really good style of basketball. That, if nothing else, from the first 10 games, that Utah loss was not a bad loss. Like, that Utah Jazz team is beating everyone. So, but yeah, the Wolves just don't make a lot of threes right now.
I'm sorry, I guess you got it. Vando is 6 for 11 from downtown to start the season.
And I don't hold me to this, but I think 6 threes is more than he's had in his whole career coming into this season.
Three made threes in his career in 4 seasons, and he has 6 in the first 2 weeks, basically.
And he's not, high volume, but he just gives you that 1 or 2 attempts a game that kind of spaces the floor on if you're a basketball nerd, I know there's like every team plays tonight, but go watch the Utah Jazz because they're fun. They play the kind of basketball that you would want this to look like, right? Like no egos, just passing the ball, making the right cuts. So, but yeah, the Wolves just don't shoot a lot. Like they don't make a lot of threes right now, and that's pulling down their offense. They're not a very efficient offense because they're just not at the same volume, not the same makes, they're not the same attempts. So they just got to kind of tick that up, and their offense will just kind of skyrocket in terms of league average. But
in the Rockets game, again, you can't like use the Rockets game as a measuring stick. But what happened? They made a bunch of threes in that game. Mm-hmm. They blew somebody out,
right? And the ball flowed more. I mean, they had issues protecting the rim in that game too, and some rebounding stuff. But yeah, the Saturday night game against what is maybe one of the worst teams in the league, the Rockets, they just looked a little better. So that's not the team that's going to play in April. You have to figure out the Rudy Gobert thing, but maybe in his absence, you can develop some more, just some more movement, some more trust, some more ball, like just kind of swinging the ball around the perimeter a little more while he's out. And you'll see that tonight when you're, sitting there courtside at center court against the Knicks team. They don't have Mitchell Robinson, so it's going to be 2 small ball lineups, and the Wolves should feast because small ball has kind of been their thing.
We're gonna hear bellowing Tom Thibodeau too. Aren't we?
Yeah. He's just gonna
switch.
He's already been yelling.
Ice.
And they've been really disappointing too. So that's another kind of good game for the Wolves to kind of measure themselves against what is pretty disappointing Knicks team. But they have got some good players. They got Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, and Tibbs always takes it personal when he plays against Minnesota. So you should have a good time tonight. If nothing else.
Yes, it will be. I don't love the late start. As a guy that likes to go to bed kind of early and kind of an old man, drink a glass of red wine around 8:45 and go to bed. The 8:15 start time locally here because the NBA is staggering each game by 15 minutes so they can roll out all these free games on their app to get people on their app. Kind of an interesting marketing ploy. Other least favorite things, I'm going to continue to say the obvious gap between Jordan McLaughlin and D'Angelo Russell. D'Lo's shown a couple flashes. I guess him and Finch sat down. I think it was before the Bucks game and just kind of talked about the early, like Finch isn't, he's not like stiff arming D'Lo. And I think Finch feels an obligation to, especially after what happened in that Memphis series where he just flat out went away from him in the last 6 minutes of the series. I think he's trying to pump him up and coach him up and tell him it's okay, it's a rough start. But he's already essentially had like a sit down with D'Lo. I think Finch said it himself. And hey, it's okay. We'll get this thing going. But we are 10 games into the season. He's still shooting 38% from the field. He's not knocking down threes at a higher rate. And don't get me started on lineup combinations again, unless you want me to. But it just keeps tilting toward Jordan McLaughlin having a positive impact on lineups. He had a game. Was it the Rockets game that he had 11 assists and 1 turnover?
And that 1 turnover came 30 seconds at the end of the game. Like it was a perfect night for him.
So the 4 best 3-man lineup combinations for the Timberwolves in terms of net points per 100 possessions. The 4 best all include Jordan McLaughlin. It's becoming
fairly glaring.
So I don't know. It's interesting.
We're starting to lose the small sample size tag. And now it's starting to become a trend. There was a really good, just a small little video, but Jace Frederick of the Pioneer Press put out this little video this morning on his Twitter account. And it's just this play against the Rockets where it's a long shot equals a long rebound. And Jordan McLaughlin flies from one end of the court to the other to just kind of like, it's not his zone to rebound the ball, but he just sprints in, gets the deflection, kind of gets the rebound and gets fouled right away and falls to the ground. But it's like those little things that the Wolves just don't do outside of Jordan, but they're winning plays. Yeah. I mean, it probably just goes down on the score sheet as a rebound, but it was such an high intensity rebound. And he just does, I mean, I think Wolves PR said he was the first player in Wolves history with multiple 10+ assists, 0 turnover games off the bench. Like it's becoming a thing now. Go look at his game logs. Like he just is going to give you a 3-1, 4-1, 5-1, hell 10-1 assist to turnover ratio. And that's just getting good shots and doing it with low risk. And it's a reason that he has to continue to play as much as possible. So yeah, Finch probably believes what you and I believe, that you can't trade D'Lo right now. You got to make it work while he's on the team, but you got to continue to inflate Jordan's minutes as much as possible because he's probably their most efficient player on the team.
Yeah, he does have a 9-to-1 assist to turnover ratio right now.
If he could just shoot a little more, everyone else on the team too, but if he could just hit a couple more open threes, he's one of the best.
He'd make a lot of money on his next contract.
Yeah, that's true too. He's another contract year guy. So I'm with you. That's another thing that hasn't, at some point, it's going to become a real talking point. Probably come end of November. It's like, hey, the best point guard on the team needs to play as much as possible. So who is that? And then go with it.
Yeah. Another just in the least favorite bin. I don't like that. Let me back up a step. I don't always buy into this narrative in sports. Like it's a thing in hockey, and it's a thing with this year's Timberwolves where they're not playing hard. I know that's one of your pet peeves when they actually aren't playing hard. I think sometimes it just looks like teams aren't playing hard because of the people that are on the court, or there's uncertainty. Maybe they're not playing fast within a system because it's just they're not used to playing with each other, whatever. But I will say one of my least favorite things about this team is that they look like they aren't playing as hard as last year's team, whether that's partially rooted in reality or it just looks that way because they haven't played with Rudy before and D'Lo's off to a bad start or whatever. But it's not a coincidence that when you take the two guys off the team that played the hardest, right? If you would have surveyed like last year's fans, okay, who plays the hardest on last year's Timberwolves team, whether it's reality or perception? Well, Jared Vanderbilt and probably Pat Beverly. They're just scrappy, just grinder players that just try to fill the cracks. You're not running plays for those guys. They're getting rebounds. They're getting hands in passing lanes, and they're diving on the floor and stuff. So, we knew that there was going to be some sort of impact with those guys leaving, and you thought that the impact would be less than the addition of Gobert and stuff. And it's way too early to say one way or the other, but it looks like they're not playing with as much grit and try hard. And maybe that's because they lost the two guys that would be number 1 and number 2 on that ranking list.
This is a specific nerdy thing, but in that Rockets game, third quarter, I think there was the Wolves had a long shot, long rebound, and Karl did dive to the ground to save the ball. I think he ended up getting fouled or called a timeout, but it was probably the first time I've seen him go to the ground for one of those 50-50 balls. That's very minor, very small sample, but you want to see those guys now, whether it be a Kyle Anderson or a Taurean Prince, they've got to fill that energy void. And I thought, again, what can you gain from that Rockets win? Not much, but I saw some guys giving a little more effort. And someone made a good point to me too, is occasionally when you see guys that you think they're not trying hard, it's because maybe they're thinking because they're in this whole experiment and they're trying to like, am I supposed to do this on defense? Am I supposed to do this? And they might just be frozen. So it looks like they're not trying. And I thought that was probably a valid point early on. It's like, maybe they're thinking too much and it's affecting just doing what Jordan McLaughlin does. Just play free, play careless in a good way. So I still think the energy and the effort is something to monitor, but I don't know. Once Kyle Anderson came back, everything made me happy because that guy just does all the little things. His box scores are hilarious. It's like 5-4-2, 4-1. Yeah. But you would hope that as they start to kind of figure this out more and trust each other, that they're going to be able to play a little more carefree, and that'll make the effort look better.
Well, let's unless you have anything else to clean up in the least favorite bin here, we can move into the favorite bin.
Yeah. What was your biggest favorite thing? Because I have a couple.
Kyle Anderson.
Okay, that's gonna be mine too.
Okay. He's just he is. You need him to sort of fill that void that we were the try hard void.
Yep.
And again, asterisk next to anything Rockets related. It's the second youngest team in the NBA. They have 1 win in their first 2.5 weeks. That's a team that's headed straight for top 3 Pickville.
Yep.
But you put him in for 31 minutes, you get 16 points on 7 shots, and then you get 6 assists. You get some rebounds. You get hands in passing lanes, 3 steals, only 1 turnover. Just the type of. It's funny because he's not like an energy guy in that he's slow-mo, right? He's an energy guy, but he's not. He's an energy guy in that he does things. You don't have to run plays for him, but he'll do things and he'll be active and he'll be a productive player.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not your classic energy guy, and that he's gonna send a bolt of lightning through the players he's playing with. He brings an interesting dynamic that's been positive so far.
And he had his best game. You just laid out his stats, but his best game was on Saturday. He had those back spasms for a little bit, so it kind of slowed down his introduction to this team, to the fan base. But we got to go back to July. If the Rudy Gobert trade doesn't happen and they just kind of run this back, the order of operations on all these transactions was the first big move was to go sign Kyle Anderson. That was whether or not it was Rudy Gobert or Walker Kessler or JaVale McGee, like whoever was playing center, they wanted Kyle Anderson. That was the first guy they wanted. And you're kind of seeing why now. I mean, Gobert was out on Saturday. I think pregame Finch said, I'm either going to probably start Naz Reid or Taurean Prince. Psych starts Kyle Anderson, and it was the right move. And I think when Rudy comes back, if there is a fall guy for that starting 5, the likely one's going to be Jaden.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And if they take Jaden out, I think Kyle Anderson's the perfect guy to put in there because he can play. I mean, he can play point. He can play center. He did it on Saturday. So he just does all those little things to be able to get 6 assists, like 1 turnover, 3 steals. He hit a couple threes. I don't think he's going to shoot 70% from 3 with those mechanics, but he keeps you honest, which is kind of the Vando thing. Like he's going to take enough shots to keep you honest, to spread the floor. But also too, after that game, players raved about him. Like they respect that guy. He does talk a lot in the locker room. So he might be the answer to our leadership power rankings of who's going to fill that void. He's been through the Spurs system, through the Grizzlies system. He's played for elite coaches, elite teams. He knows he's a winner, and that's what this team needed. So it was Kyle Anderson weekend, basically, for the Timberwolves, and it went really, really well.
You may have stumbled into our next power ranking here, actually. Janky mechanic jump shooters.
Oh, do you got any more that come to mind? I mean, Markelle Fultz is one.
Oh, Markelle Fultz. Sean Marion.
Here's a fun fact. Go or stop the podcast for a second. Go Google Sean Marion fingers. He's got a finger that looks just like Harry Potter's lightning bolt.
What?
Oh, it's just like his finger. Yeah, dude, he's got like a finger that like starts going north and then takes a detour west, and he's got some weird fingers.
Sean Marion finger. I'm going to do this.
This is perfect.
Oh, it's like.
There we go.
It looks like his pinky is snapped in half sideways.
Yep.
Is his hand always like that?
I think his hands were like that when he played for the Suns. I don't know how it happened. I've also heard,
and with the Mavericks, I'm seeing it. Yeah. Yep. Well, he went to the Mavericks after the Suns, I guess.
I've heard sometimes that like athletes have more messed up fingers than you think, which is like another topic for another day. But yeah, Sean Marion, Google search fingers.
Wow.
They definitely weren't helping his shooting mechanics. He really kind of like spun it with both hands. But Sean Marion, Kyle Anderson, Markelle Fultz, who I gotta think there's.
You know what? I'm gonna throw one of the greatest shooters of all time on this. Okay. Reggie Miller. He kind of had like the sideways spin, like shot across the face sort of mechanics, right?
That was really good. I mean, Ben Simmons is another one because he's shooting with his wrong hand. Everyone thinks he's right-handed, but Sean Marion's a good one. Kyle Anderson at least has like a good base to his jump shot. It's just the slow-mo thing. Like he takes his time to shoot those threes, but hell, they went in on Saturday, and if he can give you a third of that, it just opens up so many more things.
So we both agree on Kyle Anderson. Okay, what else stood out in the last few days? Your favorite things about the Timberwolves?
I continue to just think Karl's playing pretty well. He's gonna give you a bad foul. He had another offensive foul where he kind of just punched Sengun in the face. It seemed like, And he's going to do some things that kind of irritate you, but he's been taking more threes. I think he had like 6 attempts in those games. I'd love that to be 8, but he's trying to spread the floor. His playmaking continues to probably be the best on the team. And it's just really efficient. And I mean, I think he had like 2 blocks and a steal. Again, the Rockets game, throw that out the window. But I just thought he's been looking like his old self again as he kind of figures out his new body.
Yeah.
And they need that, because if he can be an all-star level player and just be consistent, he's been the guy I think that's gelled the best. We said this last week. He has the most assists to Gobert. Like 50% of Gobert's shots have been assisted by Karl. So I think Karl, after starting the season with maybe a silly quote and some poor play, has started to come on. And I think that's going to help, because he's going to be, the more shots he can take from 3, I think the better this team is going to be, because he is such a good, efficient shooter. So I've liked his last, 10 days or so as a Timberwolf in general.
A few interesting trends through 10 games for him that aren't necessarily surprising, just given where he's playing in that starting lineup. So free throws are down, second lowest free throws per game since his rookie season. He's down 2 free throw attempts per game since he's been at like 6.5 the last few. He's at 4.5 this year. His assists are way up. Two assists per game off the 3.5 last year. He's 5.5 assists per game, and I think a lot of those are just extra assists to Rudy.
Yep,
it's just an extra option in there for him to find Rudy at the rim. Rebounds are way down. So his peak was 12.5 rebounds a game for 3 straight years early in his career. He was only at 10 last year, and then 8.5 so far this year. Not super shocking if he's playing further away from the basket at times, both on offense and defense. And the 3-point percentage is the lowest since right now anyway, since his rookie season, but he's still shooting like 37% from downtown. So some of this is just he's still rounding into basketball shape, but some of it is his numbers might look a little different and his productivity might look different based on the lineup that he's now largely playing with, right?
Well, when you think of Karl last year, you think about him catching the ball at the top of the key, pump faking, then driving, but the whole lane was wide open. Well, we talked about Ant and him being able to navigate the trees to get to the rim. Karl is probably the one that maybe suffers the most from that, because if he's in there alongside Rudy's right there by the rim. Karl doesn't have as much space to drive. He's a big dude trying to get to the rim, but all those other numbers pretty much kind of make sense, right? Like his assists are up. He's trying to make the right pass more. The rebounds are down. That makes sense because Rudy gobbles them all up. Although I will say, like Saturday against the Rockets, he just got beat for some rebounds by Sengun for the Rockets. He doesn't look like he's rebounding like the way he used to when he was a younger guy. He's still only like 26, 27. But when he was 22, 23, he was a pretty damn good rebounder. And I don't know if it's an effort thing or just, again, doesn't have the legs, doesn't have the strength to hold guys off. But you'd like to see that number get – he should still average 10 rebounds a game, even if Rudy Gobert has, 18, because he plays enough and their teams miss shots. So, but yeah, all those – I just think he's kind of rounding into form. The shot thing, like if you've ever gone and shot hoops after you've had the flu, you just don't have your legs. You don't have your muscle memory. So hopefully another week from now, that percentage goes up. But I've liked everything he's done kind of ever since Popeye's Gate.
Yeah. Speaking of Popeye's Gate, we're gonna get to a bad thing maybe regarding. Well, we'll do the video clip that was, and we don't have it queued up for the YouTube audience, but a lot of people have seen it on social. We'll get to that. I do want to put Anthony Edwards in my favorite things.
Okay.
bin.
Okay.
I there are some things where I would like to see a little more out of him, even, and we'll kind of get to one of those things, but. I like that through 10 games, his scoring is up, his rebounding is up, his offensive efficiency is up a tick. This is going to get in the weeds a little bit, but he's at a 54% EFG, effective field goal percentage, which is up from 51% for his career, and he's getting to the line a little more lately than he was early in the season, and most importantly, he's dunking again. He must have seen all the chatter on social media of like, dude, it's been 8 games. You've yet to dunk. I think he dunked twice maybe in that Rockets game. So he has dunked. It's okay. He doesn't have people have a lot of theories as to why he wasn't dunking. Does he have a degenerative knee problem? Is he too fat and out of shape? Can he not jump that high anymore? I don't think any of those are true. I guess I don't know. I guess I don't really know why he wasn't dunking, but he does have 2 dunks now. So
the dunking takes had gotten so spicy that I was just like waiting for like Joe Rogan to start talking about them. Like they were so out of left field.
It's a 3-hour Joe Rogan breakdown as to
Yeah,
why
he's like
Ant was
breaking down these
dunkless.
MRIs of Ant's legs next to the pyramids of Giza. But no, again, Ant had Rudy alongside him on Friday, and then Saturday there's no Rudy. They're kind of playing a more similar 2022 version of the Wolves, and he started out that thing with a dunk. But I just think that's him playing himself into, I don't want to say shape, because now we're starting to wonder, did he actually come into camp a little too big? I mean, he gained muscle, but was he also a little big? Whatever happens. But I don't know. I thought that whole thing was overplayed. Like if it was 28 games and he hadn't dunked, let's talk about it on ESPN. But 8 games, it might just be, again, he's still getting to the rim. Like you said, he's upping his free throw attempts per game. Like he's clearly being aggressive. It's not like he's, those first 10 games of Anthony Edwards his rookie year, he was taking a lot of bad shots and settling. I don't think he's doing that now. But for the most part, I've loved everything Ant's done. Couple plays here or there where he might take plays off, and it's egregious to see in real time. But for the most part, it's been a good third year so far through 10 games.
He is too, and I know that you can't do this because these games do exist, and he has to own them. But if you take the first game out where he went 4 for 17 and 1 for 7 from 3-point range, and was just, he did a bunch of other stuff in that game, but he just couldn't score in that game. So if you take that out as the outlier, and again, it's part of his resume. You could do this with any player. He's shooting 49% on the season and 39% from 3-point range, averaging 24 points, 5 rebounds, 3.5 assists. So you would consider those numbers since that first game debacle offensively to be a leap. This would classify as a 30-year leap. With those numbers. So again, it's only been 10 games. There's things for him to keep working on. But there's generally there's been 2 games where he's disappeared offensively, and then the third game where he didn't score in the first half, but he did score 18 in the second half. Generally, he's been a scoring force. For the Timberwolves this year. Which is good.
Yeah, and he was a plus 20 again. I know we're downplaying the Rockets win, but it was a win on the second night of a back-to-back, which should be mentioned because he had looked pretty bad in the second night of back-to-backs. But he was a plus 20. He led the team in plus minus, and for the most part, he's scoring efficiently. He's giving you more on defense. I mean, night and day compared to rookie year Ant. I think the main thing he's trying to figure out, as is this team, right? They were so fun and gritty last year, but now people know about you. Now there's expectations. Like we're talking about this team trading all these picks. It's not to make the playoffs. It's to, essentially make the finals or make the second round. With Ant, it was like no one thought you were a good draft pick. You proved them wrong. You've been fun. You've said the right things. You're awesome. But now people expect you to be really good night in and night out. And that's what all-stars do. That's what superstars do. And you just can't have those scoreless first halves. You can't have that 4 for, 17 game 1. And you can't have plays where you don't move like at all. So I don't know if you saw that video, but
let's do it. Let's get. What do you want? You want to put this in flagrant or no, or do you want to just?
I sent you the video. So there was a video online. It was against.
It's all
the
over
Rockets.
Twitter too. You can find it.
Yeah, talk about conspiracy theories. It was the Wolves. Let's set the scene. They came out of a timeout. Finch ran a play. It was a pretty good play actually. I think it resulted in a Jaden McDaniels 3 attempt. But Ant is standing kind of in the corner or the diagonal corner, extended from the free throw line. Hands on his hips the entire play. Doesn't set a he doesn't move the entire play.
It's Randy Moss 2001. Ball gets snapped. I play when I want to play. He doesn't move up the line of scrimmage.
So the video online, if you've seen it, if you're not, I think Nikias, he covers the NBA. Go check it out. It's all over the place if you just Google Anthony Edwards. But he just doesn't move this entire play. All his other teammates are moving. They're running up, what looks like Finch drew up a play on the whiteboard, and Ant never moves the entire time. And now I'll throw it to you because you've seen it. But before we get into the conspiracy theories, it was flagrant or no. What did you think of would that play a big deal? Are you concerned about that one highlight that gets snipped and put on screenshot Twitter?
If the statement is that play was a big deal, I would say that is not a flagrant foul. I think it is kind of a big deal. I don't think you can just do. I don't know if he was like pouting, or if he's. This is where it opens up for a lot of theories too. Is he annoyed that the offense isn't just running through him on a play-by-play basis?
Mm-hmm.
Is he annoyed when plays get called that don't involve him? I mean, he's basically just a three-point decoy. Here, just take a defender out of the mix. And in fairness, the defender was standing
Like
face
glued to
guarding
him.
him the entire time.
Yep.
So it actually didn't impact the play negatively. Was he just tired and decided I'm not involved in this play. I'm just gonna stand here and get 25 seconds of a breather with my hands on my hips? It was an immature, weird look for him. So I'm not gonna say that it wasn't a big deal. I'm not gonna like blow it out of proportion, but it was just like give me the top 10 stars in the NBA. Steph Curry, Luka, Durant, like whoever you want to put on that list. Jimmy Butler at times.
Mm-hmm.
Are any of them just standing with their hands on their hips while an offensive set is being run? This wasn't like isolation. I see this in isolation all the time, right? Where, all right, we're going to clear out and James Harden's going to do his James Harden thing here for like 20 seconds.
Right.
And there's four other guys but even then, like the four other guys are in a catch and shoot position, right? You're kind of crouched over and you're ready for a pass on the 3-point line. He wasn't even ready for a pass. If somehow a pass would have been thrown to him, he would have had his hands on his hips.
It's a crazy video. Weird. It is weird. To the point of some of the people that have talked about it this morning or yesterday, being like, this is something to monitor. Thinking like trade demands or like that he's mad. I watched that video. I also saw it in real time. I put it in my notes. I was like, that was a bad play. But then the Wolves missed the shot and Ant immediately snaps into like defensive mode. So like he clicked. If you watch the play cuts off, then it's great for causing drama on Twitter. If you go back and watch the game, he immediately like snaps into like defending the guy that got the rebound. So yeah. I don't think he was pissy or I don't think he was pouting, but I still think it's kind of a big deal because go watch an Anthony Edwards game. There's multiple times where he takes plays off. And I think that's what he did here. He does it some other times where he doesn't jog back. Listen, LeBron does that and James Harden does that. And a lot of guys do that. But when they do that, it goes viral. And you're in that pantheon now kind of, being a top 10, like untradeable guy, right? Or a top 10 franchise guy. You just can't have those plays. And this is all time sensitive. I'm sure tonight, pregame or postgame, whatever, they'll talk to Ant about that and ask him like, what was that about? And he'll give a funny answer. But it's a bad look. Even if Finch was like, hey, Ant, we want you to Finch might have told him, don't move. Just have your guy glued to you so we can give Jaden more room to cut. But it just doesn't look good. It's one of the mild criticisms I have of Ant is that if you are a super duper star and a franchise player, all NBA, I mean, you want to be all defense. You can't take plays off. You have to. All defense isn't about a highlight block against Russell Westbrook in that Lakers game where he strips the ball. All defense is about all the other dirty stuff you got to do that doesn't get counted. So yeah, it's not the biggest. He's not trying to leave Minnesota, but it's just a bad look and something that the best players rarely do. And when they do it, they get called out for it.
Yeah, I didn't take it as like a protest against the organization.
No, he wasn't a glue girl.
Yeah, that's what happened. He glued his feet to the 3-point line. He's just trying to play it cool with his hands on his hips. But it is probably one of those. If you're Chris Finch, I'll throw this question at you. Is that a play where Chris Finch should grab that 15-second, 20-second video clip and sit him down and say, "Hey, man, what happened here?"
I would be knowing Finch and getting to talk. Like I would be shocked if that didn't come up, like on Sunday at shoot around, or if it didn't come up at all. Like just pull him aside. And again, it goes back to the Timberwolves analogy. We're in a different world now. It's not just the pesky Timberwolves making the playoffs against the Grizzlies. You have expectations. If you're Anthony Edwards, you have expectations now. You've had a great first 2 years, but everything you post off the court now is going to be more micromanaged. Everything you eat is going to be more, everything you say, like you can't be the franchise player and say, yeah, you know what? I'm probably not going to have it on back-to-backs. You can't do that stuff anymore. And I think he's learning in real time. I think he just took the play off and is like, Jaden's going to score. Because again, he played really good basketball after that play. God forbid if anyone watched the game. So it's not the biggest deal, but it's part of the learning process for a 21-year-old who's going from kind of an unknown first overall pick to one of the best young players in the league.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to one of the things we talked about earlier, that whether it's reality or just kind of a perceptual thing. This team doesn't look like it's playing hard all the time, and that's just another example of it. So, all right, here's one for you: flagrant or no? We've had a lot of talk about D'Lo. D'Lo's off to just a really bad start. Didn't he have like a 3 for 15 there too?
The Bucks game wasn't very good. Yeah.
So just a lot of bad D'Lo to start the season. This is the last year of his contract, $31 million. It's an expiring contract, so it could be valuable for someone looking to clear cap space this summer. I don't even know if I'm going to put a qualifier on this. The Timberwolves should look to trade D'Lo's expiring contract before the trade deadline in season. Flagrant or no?
No. Or oh god, I'm still trying to learn the rules of the game. But that's that's one of the best things you've said is that it has to be discussed. You can't wait till the summer. You can't, because this is one of those rare situations where that 30-some million that Phil just said, if it comes off the books, you don't have an empty room in your house. That house is just still, you don't get cap space if D'Lo leaves. No. You just have no point guard. And now some people would joke and say, well, they don't have a point guard now. But you have to make those decisions prior to February 18th or whatever, because you're either going to extend him or you're going to trade him. But it's not one of those rare cases where if a player leaves, you have $30 million to spend. They don't have the money to spend.
Yeah.
So
what would that trade look like? It would essentially be, because there would be a team. I haven't done a full comb through yet, but
I know what you mean.
You would have to take on $31 million in salary back around there. So you'd have to probably take on a bad contract or two, or something that has like a year and a half left on a deal or something.
Right.
I don't know that there would be draft picks involved in this trade or not, but would you be willing to take on, at least one bad contract to make up for the $31 million going to match salaries? I mean, that's part of the price. It's not just like, oh, this is full value. Somebody would have to be taking on a player that they don't necessarily want because of the contract. So
and then we should mention that if D'Lo was playing really, really well, this is still a really good question, because again, it goes back to this is a rare situation where if he leaves your team, you don't have many other options other than just what you have on the roster. So yeah, it would probably be like I'm always a believer that any player can be traded. I mean, we've seen that now, like with Wiggins and Russell and John Wall, all these guys, Westbrook, all these guys get traded. Like there's no such thing as a bad contract, but it would be Russell's expiring $30-some million to like a Charlotte. And then you have to take back, I think, like Terry Rozier, and he has like 3 or 4 years left at $20 million a year. And then a guy who clears, right? So you're basically saying we're going to get rid of D'Lo, and we're going to take on longer money because we don't have any money to spend anyway. We can swallow this, but we don't have free money to spend. And now you have Terry Rozier as your kind of pseudo starting point guard. I don't know if I love that, but that's the types of deals that you're going to be looking for. You're not going to find, I'm going to give you $35 million, Phil, that expires May 31st, and you're going to give me $31 million that expires May 31st.
Correct.
That's not how it's going to work.
There's 100%. I think you just nailed it. And then the second contract you would take comes off the books, right? You said,
yep. So you're saving a little money. You're basically getting a starting point guard for $21 million moving forward for 3 years.
Yeah, it's funny how contracts just become bad right away. Like Terry Rozier didn't sign a contract that long ago, did he? Was it like a year ago?
No.
And now it's like, oh, yeah, probably could have told you that you weren't going to love that contract. Although he is off to the best start of his career this year, for what it's worth. 3 games. Has he been hurt? I don't even know.
I think he's been hurt. I mean, the Hornets are definitely in the Wembanyama sweepstakes. They are not really motivated to win, but it's a really, we got to make it through November, as we said last week, and you got to get a little more sample size and see who is going to work on this experiment long term. But when early December comes and you have more guys that are eligible to be traded, which just helps in the building of the contracts, because $35 million is a lot of money. You got to find the pieces to make that work. Yeah. It's something they have to figure out, and they had to figure it out since the day they traded for Gobert, because when they brought Gobert in, they burned all their possible cap space. You also don't have a ton of picks. You do have a bunch of guys. This is for next week or whatever, but the Iowa Wolves are the most exciting sports team on planet Earth right now. You should go check them out. They have a bunch of young guys down there that are the new wave of experiments, but no, they have to figure this out in the next 3 to 4 months. Are we going to extend them or are we going to trade them? Because I would bet with a bullet that the option that they choose isn't going to be, we're just going to ride it out till the summer, because that's a bad option and it gives you the least flexibility.
Yeah. I'm going to spring a new segment on you here that I think we should do every single week.
Okay.
It's called Phil and Kyle Peek at the Western Conference Playoff Picture.
Deal.
It's never too early. We're sitting here first week in November, and we are going to peek at the Western Conference Playoff Picture. So right now, the Phoenix Suns are tied with the Utah Jazz for the number 1 seed. Now, the Suns have a percentage points lead over the Jazz, but those two teams are tied. Memphis is the 3 seed right now, half game back. The Blazers and the Nuggets are a full game back of first, and the Mavericks are a game and a half. So 6 teams within a game and a half of first place in the Western Conference. Then you get to the 4 play-in teams. The 7 seed will be the Pelicans. The 8 seed is the Clippers. The 9 seed is the Spurs. And the Timberwolves are holding strong inside the play-in picture as the 10 seed right now.
If the playoffs started today on November 7th.
Yep. So if they did, remind me how this play-in structure works. So they would play the 9 seed Spurs, right?
Oh, God. You put me on the spot.
Or would they play the
Pelicans.
They'd play the 7 seed Pelicans?
Yes.
Okay. And if the Pelicans win, they're in.
Yep.
But if the Wolves win, they have to win another game? Is that how that works?
Yes, they'd have to play then the loser of the 8-9 game. I can't believe I already forgot these rules, but Adam Silver changes them so often. But no, you would get a Pelicans Wolves first quote unquote round play-in game, and that game would be awesome.
The Pelicans at full strength scare me a lot in the Western Conference. Some of these, I do think the Jazz are gonna be competitive. I don't know that they're gonna be like flirting with the 2nd seed in the Western Conference. The Blazers are tough because I think it's dependent on how healthy and strong can Damian Lillard be for 82 games, and the answer is usually he misses a lot of time. And he's missed some time this year. But some of these other teams, like, I don't know that the Spurs are going to drop off a little, but the Spurs play hard. They're competitive. There's not that many pushover teams. I mean, the Warriors right now are one of the worst teams in the West record-wise.
Right.
That's not going to be the case all season, right?
Right.
They're 3-7. So they're not. The Wolves aren't just going to be able to, like, they already got the easy portion of their schedule, and they're 500 right now. So they're going to have to actually work their way up this ladder. They're not going to be handed victories on a nightly basis.
Yeah, they're 2.5 games out of the 1 seed, and they're also 2.5 games out of the 14 seed. So that just tells you, I mean, the West is already a little more bottled up than the East. But like San Antonio, some of those teams too that are pesky, like the Spurs, like the Thunder, even the Blazers, like you said, it's a lot easier to play hard those first couple months when you're 500. But the Spurs, I think, have lost 3 in a row. Once you're like, I don't know, man, 10-28, it's a little harder to get up for those games. So I think you'll start to see some of those teams kind of fall off. But yeah, I mean, the 10 seed on November 7th isn't great, but they have a pretty good schedule coming up here too of teams that are worth, getting data on and being like, okay, that's a good win. I mean, the Knicks team plays hard. They might not have a great record, but they play hard. So, and they get to play the Suns again this week, who the Suns just lost Cam Johnson for the year. So they've got some good games coming up that'll be a much better benchmark than those Spurs Thunder games.
Yeah. Amen. All right, there's your peek at the Western Conference playoff picture. I'm gonna force this on you every week until the actual playoffs are planned.
Only 26 more weeks of that.
All right. Any other final thoughts here before we say goodbye on this episode of Flagrant Howls? Any mustache advice? What do you?
No, I gotta get some wax. Now that I see it in real time, I need to trim it a little bit. But the mustache will continue to stay. I mean, I feel confident they beat the Wolves or the Knicks tonight because the mustache is around. But I'm excited for you this will be your first game you've attended since when? When's the last time you were at a game?
Since before COVID. I have not been to a Timberwolves game at the Target Center since before COVID. Yeah.
So we'll see. If the Wolves win by 20 tonight, you might have to stay in Minneapolis. That's like your mustache.
I might have to go to games. Like, see if my wife will love or hate that. I'm not sure.
Hey, honey, just a quick detour. I'm going to be staying in Minneapolis for 6 more weeks. But no, I think tonight's another good litmus test. You had the really good Bucks. You had the really bad Rockets. And now you get a Knicks team that has deficiencies, but they play really hard under Tibbs. They're always desperate. And it should be a good kind of benchmark for what the Wolves are going to do in these next couple weeks as they get Kyle Anderson more involved and get Jordan McLaughlin more involved and continue to kind of use that depth to pull out games early in the season.
Amen. And we got you guys 2 episodes a week here on Flagrant Howls. If you haven't already, click subscribe on the Score North YouTube channel. And also the like button on this particular video. And over on the audio side, if you could give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on the Flagrant Howls Apple podcast feed, help spread the word about this Timberwolves community that you guys are helping us build here. So thanks for hanging out. 50 wins is the goal here. Got to pick up the pace, guys. Your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle and mustache grooming show, Flagrant Howls.